The rain wasn't the reason the world felt muted. It had been gray inside my apartment for weeks, a quiet, settled dust over everything I owned. I was nursing a cup of coffee that had gone cold, watching the water streak down the window pane, when Chloe finally worked up the nerve to say it. She'd been vibrating on my sofa for the past 20 minutes, a hummingbird of anxiety, twisting the hem of her sweater until the threads protested. I assumed it was about her date. It was always about the date. "So, Mark is picking me up at 8, she began, her voice small. "I know. You've told me." 3 times my tone was flat, but she was too caught in her own storm to notice. She took a breath, a sharp, hitching thing. "Right. Well, the thing is, Maya, I'm not very good at this." "At this?" I prompted, turning from the window. The pale light caught the panic in her eyes. "Kissing," she whispered, the word barely escaping her lips. "I'm terrible at it. My last boyfriend, he said I was clinical." A bitter laugh almost escaped me. I swallowed it down with the dregs of my coffee. Clinical. Of all the words. I, on the other hand, had been accused of being too much of everything else. Too intense. Too emotional. Too. Chloe, nobody is terrible at kissing. It's just pressure. "It'll be fine," I tried for reassuring. It came out sounding like a diagnosis. "No, it won't," she insisted, her gaze finally meeting mine, desperate and pleading. And then she dropped the bomb that would rearrange the architecture of my carefully constructed world. "I was thinking, maybe you could show me." The silence that followed was so profound I could hear the rain drumming against the glass, each drop a tiny hammer against my composure. My heart did a slow, painful lurch in my chest. Show her. As if it were a recipe. As if I were a cookbook she could consult before trying a new dish. As if my mouth, my experience, my entire history of loving women was just a tool for her to sharpen before she went off to be with a man. The sheer, oblivious cruelty of it was breathtaking. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw my mug against the wall. Instead, I just stared at her, at my best friend, the person who knew everything about me except the one thing that mattered, and I felt the familiar cage of my own silence closing in around me. "You want me to?" "What?" I asked, my voice a dry rasp. I needed to hear her say it again, needed to confirm the shape of the blade before it went in. She stood up, pacing the small square of my living room rug. "Just show me how it's supposed to be. You're good at it, right? I mean with..." She waved a hand vaguely, encompassing my entire romantic history, my identity, in one dismissive gesture. She didn't mean it to be cruel. That was the part that hurt the most. To her, it was a simple transaction. A favor between friends. To me, it was a vivisection. "Chloe, that is a profoundly terrible idea," I said, my voice tight. I stood and carried my mug to the kitchen, needing the motion, needing the barrier of the countertop between us. "Ask a movie. Ask the internet. Don't ask me. The internet is all porn and bad advice, and movies are fake." Her voice followed me, rising with frustration. "You're real. You know what you're doing. Please, Maya. I'm going to ruin it with Mark. I can feel it. He's so nice, and I'm going to be this awkward plank of wood." I gripped the edge of the sink, my knuckles white. She was painting a picture of her own vulnerability, and she had to know, that it was my weakness. Seeing her in pain, even this self-inflicted, ridiculous pain, was something I was constitutionally incapable of ignoring. The wall I kept around my feelings for her, so solid and reinforced for years, was beginning to show cracks. It was always her insecurity that chipped away at it. She would present me with her broken pieces, and I, the fool, would always try to glue them back together, even if it meant cutting my own hands in the process. "It's not a performance," I said, turning back to face her. "There isn't a right way. It's just feeling." "Then teach me how to feel it," she begged, stepping into the kitchen, closing the distance. She stopped just a few feet away, her eyes wide and glistening. "One kiss. That's all. A practice run. So I don't make a complete fool of myself. For me, Maya. As my best friend. Best friend." The words were a lock on the cage. It was the role I had accepted, the one I performed daily. The best friend who listened to her boy troubles, who helped her pick out outfits for dates, who sat with her on the sofa with ice cream when they inevitably broke her heart. The best friend who was quietly, hopelessly, in love with her. And the best friend, I knew with a sinking finality, could not say no to this. Refusing would require an explanation I could never give. It would mean admitting that a practice run for her felt like a final exam for me, one I was terrified to fail. Surrendering was easier than explaining the betrayal. Fine, I heard myself say, the word tasting like ash. Fine. One lesson. And then you never, ever mention it again. The relief that washed over her face was a physical blow. She beamed, a radiant, grateful smile that did nothing to soothe the churning acid in my stomach. Thank you, she breathed. Thank you, Maya. You're the best. I didn't feel like the best. I felt like a traitor to myself. The air in the room shifted. The mundane backdrop of my Tuesday afternoon, the scent of old coffee, the rhythmic patter of rain, the soft gray light, was suddenly charged, theatrical. It was a stage, and we were two actors who had forgotten our lines. Chloe stood there, waiting, a student ready for her lesson. I felt a cold dread mix with a hot, shameful flicker of anticipation. I was going to do this. I was going to take this small, hollow piece of her she was offering and pretend it was the whole thing. Okay, I said, my voice sounding unnaturally loud. If we're going to do this, we're doing it properly. I was stalling, creating a script to protect myself. It's not just mashing faces together. A nervous laugh escaped her. Right. No face mashing. Got it. I walked back into the living room, my movements stiff. I felt her follow. Stand here, I instructed, pointing to the center of the rug. It felt less intimate than the kitchen, more neutral. I needed all the neutrality I could get. She obeyed, her hands clasped in front of her as if in prayer. I took a deep breath, trying to summon a detached, professorial air. First, you have to relax. You're wound up like a watch spring. Your shoulders are up by your ears. I reached out, my fingers hesitating for a fraction of a second before they made contact with the warm wool of her sweater. I pressed gently on her shoulders, pushing them down. Her entire body was a knot of tension. Under my hands, I felt her shiver, a tiny, electric tremor. Or maybe that was me. Breathe, I commanded, my voice softer than I intended. Just breathe with me. I guided her through it, an exaggerated inhale, a slow exhale. Her eyes were fixed on my face, wide and searching. She was trying so hard to get it right, to be a good student. The irony was a physical ache in my throat. She thought she was learning how to kiss a man, but I was teaching her how to kiss me. I was showing her all the things I wanted, cloaked in the guise of instruction. It was the most honest lie I had ever told. Better, I murmured, letting my hands fall away. The loss of contact left my palms feeling cold. Now, the biggest mistake people make is thinking it's all about the mouth. Her brow furrowed in confusion. It's not. No, it's about everything else. First, I was speaking from a place deep inside me, a place that had cataloged every fantasy of her for years. It's about the space between you. The anticipation. You don't just rush in. I took a half step closer, demonstrating. The air between us crackled. I could smell the faint, clean scent of her shampoo, something with peaches in it. You let the moment build. You watch their eyes. You watch their mouth. My gaze dropped to her lips, and my own words caught in my throat. Her lips were parted slightly, her breath a soft, visible puff in the cool air of the room. This was a mistake. A catastrophic, world-ending mistake. Like this, she whispered, her own eyes tracing the shape of my mouth. My heart hammered against my ribs, a trapped bird desperate for escape. I couldn't speak, so I just nodded. My clinical detachment was gone, burned away by our proximity. The lesson had become something else entirely, something fragile and dangerous. I was supposed to be the teacher, the one in control, but I had lost the thread of the narrative. I had no idea what came next. My own script had run out. And, your hands, I managed to say, my voice hoarse. Don't just let them hang there. They're part of it. I reached out again, my movements